You'd unmute everybody. Is it recording? Everything good? Do we have everybody here?
Wes
I see. I don't see Wes.
I here. Let's see here. Hold on there. How about? Oh shoot, where'd I go? How about now?
I see you.
Okay, it went to sleep on me.
Okay. Well, now I see the ceiling.
Hold on. Hold on 1 second, okay, Roy?
Right.
Hold on. Let me shut the door again. Okay. All right. How about now?
Okay. Just a real quick mic check from everybody. Trey?
Here, present.
Councilman Feemster?
Here.
Mr. Bowers? His mic's muted. Chris's mic's muted.
I'm here.
There you go. Okay, good.
I was muting just to be respectful.
Oh, okay.
Then
Cool.
I got my mouse died. So
Hate it when that happens. Mr. Hudson.
Here.
All right. Mr. Roper.
Present.
All right, very good. I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. Welcome, and I know that there are folks that are going to be out watching this on YouTube via Facebook. I appreciate everybody going to extreme measures during extreme times to, I guess, keep everybody safe. I'm happy that everybody in my family so far is safe, and I see that all of you on here are. So continue to keep everyone in our prayers. In our meeting tonight, it'll be a little different because we're going to take it a little bit slower. I guess, we really will be forced to use Robert's rules a lot more stricter now. So as we go through, and if you want to make a comment, then speak or raise your hand, and I'll recognize you. To Vice Chairman Bauer's point, try to be respectful of everybody else. That way, we don't just have a bunch of talk going on at the same time. So just keep that in mind, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Vice Chairman Bowers for our invocation and Pledge of Allegiance.
let's pray. Our dear Lord and gracious Heavenly Father, we humbly come to you tonight to say thank you. Thank you for the grace and the mercy that you've given us, Lord. We pray that you continue to have your hand over our community, over our county, over our state, over our nation, God. We pray that you be with the frontline workers and the essential workers that are out there every day keeping this country running, Lord. We pray that you give them safety. We pray that you just bless their families and give them safety as well, God. We know that you have an almighty plan for all of this that we can't understand, but we have faith in you. The Lord, pray that you be with us tonight as we go through this meeting. We do the business of this county, God. Just give us wisdom and guidance, discernment as we need it. We love you and we thank you for all that you have done and all that you're going to do. Amen.
Amen.
I don't know how to do the pledge, Roy. I'm
not sure how to do it either, other than stand if you can. If you can't, then that's fine too.
If you'll step to your left, I can see the flag. There you go.
There we go.
A flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, I didn't know how difficult that was going to be, and thank you for doing that. This is, like I said, this is going to be a little bit challenging for us. First time I've ever had to try to do a meeting with headphones on so that I can hear you guys. I do want to, before we move forward with our second item, make sure that you all know if at any time that you cannot hear or you cannot be a part of this meeting, then we will suspend the meeting immediately. If for some reason you can't hear and you can't get our attention, then Ms. Bradford is standing by cell phone. You can shoot her a text and we'll stop the meeting where we are. I just want to make sure that everybody has a voice and that everybody can hear the conversation that's going on. So we're all good?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. All right, our second item on the, well, okay, first of all, I do need to make a mention of this. Tonight, there is no public forum. All the county facilities are closed to the public at this time, including the Pickens County Courthouse, Administration Building, and all county parks. The governor issued a stay-at-home order, not just a few minutes ago, about an hour ago. And while the county facilities are currently closed to the public, all departments remain fully operational through phone, email, drive-through, or by appointment. Actually, drive-through is not working right now, so it's either by phone, email, or by phone or email. Please find more information on the Pickens County website at www.co.pickens.sc.us. Now on to our second item, which is the approval of the minutes. So I'll ask for a motion approving the minutes for the February 25th budget work session, March 2nd council meeting, March 18th special called meeting. I ask for a motion in a second.
So moved.
Motion by Vice Chairman Bowers, second by Councilman Feimster. Is there any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor signify by, I guess you're gonna have to signify by raising your hand and give me a voice.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, okay, good.
Aye.
Motion's approved unanimously. On to item number 3. This is our administrator's report, so I will turn it over to our acting administrator, Mr. Ken Roper.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Give you an update, hopefully brief update, but there will be some slides that will accompany this, so I'd ask for Ms. Brad to drive that part of it, just to give you an update on where we are. We're now, since March 20th, we have been on in a state of emergency in Pickens County. We are now up to 19 active COVID-19 cases in the county, spread kind of geographically throughout the county. There's a couple of zip codes that haven't been impacted yet, but it's pretty wide distribution of those cases that we know of that are positives now. Since you enacted the emergency order, I have taken several actions to try to help. And if Ms. Bradford, if you could advance a slide, please bear with us here. We'll make sure she's able to do that.
Can you advance the slide?
All right, if you could advance again, there you go. State of emergency benefits. This comes from our emergency management folks. It allows private sector healthcare partners to receive assistance from us. We've given out a couple of distributions from our strategic national stockpile that was delivered to us by the South Carolina National Guard. That's one of the benefits that being in the emergency allows us to do. We've also, in our emergency operations center, hired temporary personnel. We have 2 people down there now that we brought on temporarily to help staff out the emergency operations center. It also allows contracts, requisitions, and compensation for goods and services for private sources, and we've been taking advantage of that where appropriate. Suspend the limit for daily expenditures to purchase resources to protect the health and safety of the public in very limited circumstances. We've done that as well. And it also allows me flexibility to purchase needed equipment pertaining to the employees in the administration building to sustain the county during the COVID-19 pandemic. These are all benefits that I think you all knew about. We talked about those. There have been some other immediate things that have come about. If you could advance the slide, please. One thing that we did right from the outset, under the provisions of your emergency ordinance that you had the foresight to pass some years back, it allows the administration to form task forces to help at-risk populations. The picture you see in front of you is actually a group of library custodians who, because our libraries shut down during this crisis, had not had work to do. So rather than for us to just pay them to be at home, we've made them adjunct members of our EOC, and they have been serving on our task force. What they're seen here doing is cleaning in the Meals on Wheels facility. Since the Meals on Wheels facility is more important than ever during this crisis, we have had our custodial staff doing frequent cleanings into places where the meals are delivered and picked up. And so they've been helping in that way. They've also been providing cleanliness in the Meals on Wheels building, because we know, particularly during this time, that the folks out there in the community need those meals delivered. We've also been able to, as a part of that with our task force, place some calls to those Meals on Wheels folks when we've been requested by Meals on Wheels. Normally, Meals on Wheels works in such a way that they come, they visit with the person. They do more than just drop off a meal. They also learn about the well-being of the person. And so we've been able to reach out, and Meals on Wheels has cooperated with us for us to call those people and do call well checks from our 911 center. So we've made them parts of our task force. You'll see here photos of people, county employees that have been repurposed as a part of the task force to prepare meals for Meals on Wheels. So you'll see them there in the Meals on Wheels kitchen. If you could advance the slide again, please. And we've been out and about delivering this week as well, during a time when Meals on Wheels maybe doesn't have the volunteers that they would like to have because of restrictions and people want to stay at home. But we've been using otherwise non-essential county workers to help supplement that. And that's all been made possible because of the declaration of emergency and the opening up of the restrictions that would otherwise be on me. If you could advance to the next slide, please. I've sent out a series of emergency orders. I'm kind of taking the model that some of the other local governments, the governor, are doing. And I'm keeping a log of those because I want, after this is over, I want you gentlemen to be able to review all of the actions that I took that I considered outside the bounds of just normal day-to-day operations. So I've kept a log of those emergency orders, and I'll give you a quick overview of a few of those. Number one, I closed the administration facility to foot traffic. That was one of the very first things I did. Directed the Emergency Operations Center to form the task force that we've been talking about. I sent all employees in the 70+ older risk category home and have been paying them regardless through the use of their sick leave. I've reinvigorated their sick leave by an order just today so that they're not losing time when they would be working, but they're not being allowed to work. We've also made non-essential employees in the 60 to 69 risk category. We've made them not report to work beginning on Monday, March 23rd, unless we could make them work remotely and or we could isolate them within the work environment. Employees with children, we've been able to provide them some flexibility on their hours and also complied with federal law changes in that regard. We have also suspended employee drug screens. That may seem like an odd thing, but it's a requirement that we screen people for drug use before we bring them onto the county payroll. But what we've done is where we've brought back people we already knew, and we knew that the drug testing lab wouldn't be able to give us information, we went ahead and brought them in anyway. Again, that was an emergency power that I took. Reassigned the library staff, as I've mentioned, the library, which does not report to the administrator. I reassigned that custodial staff to the regular custodial staff to work as an adjunct to the task force. And more importantly, that under the emergency grant of powers, the library employees who do not normally report to the administrator and the elections office, which certainly does not report to the administrator, I reassigned 2 librarians to keep the elections office open during the period of time where it has been unmanned. And I'm sure that we'll talk about that more in a moment. Reassigned some people from our tourism office to the task force. Moved forward to hire a temporary director of elections, even though that normally would not be allowed. We've also changed some things we're doing with our recycling, rotating staff, allowing employees to work from home. And then today, I've already referenced this, I refreshed for vulnerable employees who were sent home 2 weeks ago. I have refreshed their sick leave 10 days so that they would not be unjustly impacted. Tomorrow, I'll be signing grant paperwork for a JAG program that requires no local match, but it'll allow the sheriff to go ahead and get in line for $60,000 worth of grant funding to allow his office to prepare for and respond to the coronavirus. Normally that would take a more elaborate time period, but I'm able to do it quickly under the grant you've given me, and I think that is a good thing. If you could advance the slide, I'm not sure if that's the next. Yeah, general information we've been putting in the newspapers, trying to communicate with people as much as we can. We did that without competitive bids. This is just one example where we just said, okay, newspapers, send us your rate sheet and we're going to buy some ads. We didn't do it competitively like we would have otherwise done. So that's another example. And if you could please advance the slide. This is beyond the realm of emergency powers, but I wanted to tell you that we started a red ribbon campaign. We've been promoting this on social media, as well as promoting our county staff to do this, that all of us to remind each other that the first responders, the EMS workers, the firemen, the rescue squad, the police officers, red is supposed to remind us of those folks who have to say if they're willing to put their lives on the line with these calls when they don't know what's on the other side, we'll wear red to say we're going to remind ourselves to do the things that are appropriate ourselves. So those things would be stay home, maintain social distance, maintain cleanliness, cut out any unnecessary travel. That's the least we can do. And we wear red to remember that the reason we're doing that is to support the emergency efforts. If you could advance the slide, please. This is just showing you some general things we're doing where we reactivated the drive-through window, and different county employees have gone out and offered curbside service where appropriate. So government is still functioning. We're going to what I would describe as extraordinary efforts to still give service to the public because we see that as important, and we want to make sure that people still feel like the government is here for them. But it's causing us to adapt almost on a daily basis where circumstances have changed. Just today, the drive-through, which we've been using to great effect, the motor's burned up on it. It hasn't been used in years the way we've been using it. One day we had over 500 cars come through. So we have taxed it to its limit, and we're having to adapt today to change our plan for people doing business with the county. So that's another example of how we have to make decisions quickly in this circumstance. If you could advance to the next slide. This is I took this photo. This is one of our election board members, Herb Thompson, who has been very cooperative and very helpful on the last day possible. Within the last couple of hours of the workday, we were able to get him to come up here so that he could swear in these two librarians to allow the elections office to remain operational. He was very nice to do that, and the rest of the board, other than I guess him and Miss June Bowers, all resigned without any notice and left us in the lurch. But thankfully, the library staff was able to send us, these are supervisor level people, they're smart people, and we were able to get them sworn in and continue operations without missing a beat in the elections office. We also have Miss Christian, who recently retired from the Greenville County Elections Office, who's come in now and is serving to give us technical expertise in that office. So that was all enabled by the emergency declaration. I was able to step in and do those things. If you could advance the slide, please. And I believe that was the last thing I had prepared for you tonight, but on the COVID-19 response, but I would be glad to answer any questions at this time.
Mr. Roper.
Councilman Hendricks, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Mr. Roper, I would like for you to clarify something from your viewpoint, being that you're knowledgeable about the elections board. There's been a lot of misinformation going on in social media regarding the elections board and the role of county council with the elections board and the director of elections. And I would like for you to clarify and state the facts of county council's role, which we do not have a role with the elections board, nor do we have a role with the director of voter registration. Would you please clarify that so that people do not get misinformed by inappropriate posts on social media, please?
All right, Mr. Hendricks, thank you for the question. I will tell you that state law was changed a few years back by the General Assembly and signed by the governor, taking almost any control whatsoever locally away from the county for the elections office. Instead, it vested power almost exclusively in an elected board, a non-elected board, an appointed board that was appointed by the governor. That board in this instance would not really be open to our input. The county council had absolutely no control over the day-to-day operations of the elections office. However, County Council did on repeated occasions fund the elections office as was requested. There may be some implication that since you funded them, then you have control. But year to year, you pass that budget, and then it's up to that board that you have no control over, and their employees, which you certainly have no control over, in the conduct of the elections. So other than you annually approving the budget, state law gives you zero authority over that office. Now, keep in mind that when what I characterized, and I'm glad to characterize as a stunt, was pulled, where all of the election staff and the certain election board members all resigned at once. When that happened, we were in a state of emergency, or I'm not sure what this council could have done then. I guess we would have had to hope that the governor would have intervened soon. The governor would have intervened soon. But in the meantime, because we had emergency powers, I was able to repurpose some librarians. But to go back to the original point of your question, you, Councilman Hendricks, any of the other of the five of you have absolutely zero authority over the elections office, and that's because state law was changed some 5 or 6 years ago.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Roper.
Thank you very much for clarifying that for those that have been misinformed by inappropriate information or information that is not accurate.
Councilman Whitehurst.
Yeah. To Mr. Roper, sounds like you've done a really good job using your current resources and reallocating them. And my understanding is we can't do that unless we're under this emergency position we're in now with the county emergencies. But what I'd like to know, and trying to keep things as transparent as possible, can we have as a part of your administrator's report what we have spent beyond what would be in our budget and what they're spent on? And as we're away, I appreciate you keeping these administrative emergency orders, but can we publish them? I think I want to know what you are doing, and I think the public does as well. And is there a way we can do that? We can say, here's all the orders we've issued, and here's the money that we've spent dealing with this crisis.
I think to answer your question in spirit, yes, absolutely. I don't mind any of these orders being published as far and wide as they need to be, because it's all reasonable, limited things that we could do. I'll certainly also put out, and will be glad to put out, although I don't have it prepared for tonight's meeting, a list of the monies that we've spent in response. That money is being tracked carefully because we're going to apply, as would anybody, for reimbursement of those expenses. Right. I'll tell you, it's all been relatively limited up to now. I don't want to alarm you, but we have made some purchases, and when the emergency management folks recommended them. So yes, I'll be glad to put out that information, and thank you for that question.
I think what that does is it gives us a little more feeling of comfort, because when people hear emergency, they're like, where's government taking over? And that's one of my fears is a government grab of power. But if we're saying, here's what we've done, here's the orders we've given, and here's what things are costing, here's what we're spending, I think it gives a level of comfort, at least it does to me, as to the way we're handling this.
I understand it. Thank you.
Vice Chairman Bowers.
Mr. Roper, I just had a clarification question. Curiosity, I guess. The folks that you've extended leave for, the at-risk population that works for the county, et cetera, are those funds reimbursable?
We certainly are going to apply for those. And my understanding is that will be a reasonable request until we get the complete sign off on that. I don't want to make a bold statement one way or the other, but we're certainly going to apply for those. We're keeping track, even details of how much time people are spending. This is off the point, but just to show you how closely we're keeping this, of times people are spending in the emergency operations, because we're going to apply for their regular salary and or hourly rate spent working entirely on this emergency, because it's taking them off their normal job. So not only sick leave that we're refreshing, but just regular office time that's been devoted to COVID-19 response, we're going to seek reimbursement for that as well.
Does anybody else have any other questions? I have a brief question for you on the census, because I know that that has been a big topic, and now that we're in the middle of this, and at least everybody's at home, I guess they could better opportunity to respond. How is the county doing with regards to the census?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can report some good news, and that is while a couple of weeks back we were lagging behind significantly, as of yesterday, actually it may have been the day before yesterday, Pickens County moved above the state average in our census response. So we're now responding as a county above what the average of the state response was. We still have some areas that are lagging. And I think if I tell them to you, you'll know exactly why they're lagging. It's Central and Clemson. Central and Clemson are lagging, and they normally lag because it's a huge amount of student population. Well, the students aren't there. In many cases, some information we received from the census today said about 1 in 4 are actually in town. The rest of them are probably back home. And because of that, the census is still actively trying. Our GIS department, as recently as today, sent more maps to the census folks to tell them where these Clemson student apartments are, because we're going to keep trying to push on that and keep trying to get a better count, a more complete count in Central and Clemson. But the other thing I would tell you is good numbers like they have in Liberty. They have really good numbers like they have in parts of Easley. They have really good numbers. In 6 Mile, they have really good numbers. That means that 45% of the people have responded.
Wow.
So I think that is a challenge. If 45% is a good number, then all of those people in those communities, we still have more than half that can still respond and help our numbers even more. So to the extent that you can encourage your friends and neighbors to take the time while they are stuck at home to go on their cell phones and go to census.gov and respond, there's still time to do that.
Great, thank you very much. We'll move on to our next item, which is our committee reports. The Committee of the Whole met in council chambers at Pickens County Administration Facility on Monday, March 16th. But due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we adjourned that meeting and immediately went into a special called emergencies meeting to discuss COVID-19 and the impact that it's having on South Carolina. On to item number 5, council correspondence. Y'all have to bear with me here. Here we go. We will have a budget work session meeting on Monday, April the 20th, in lieu of the COW. Then we'll have a special called council meeting April the 27th. And then the next council meeting for the month of May, of course, will be on May the 4th. Is there any other correspondence that needs to be announced? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to motion period and new business. We're now in our motion period. Does any member have any motions at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 7. This is the consideration of extension of the state of emergency from where we are now.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Hendricks.
I would like to make a motion that we extend the ordinance through the next council meeting. However, and I stress the word however, I would like for us, my clerk's chairman, to omit 1-D-8. In no way should 1-D-8 be in that ordinance. Pickens County residents do not need to have the fear that anything is going to happen to their guns. This council will not do anything to people's guns. We're gun-toting individuals. I have several guns myself, and we will not try to take someone's guns from them. I make a motion that we extend this ordinance through next council meeting, and we omit 1-D-8. Take that thing out.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilman Feemster. I'd like to make an amendment to the motion. I'd like us to put ordinance number 526 on the consent agenda to go into the committee of the whole, that once this thing is over, that we can take a look at our entire emergency ordinance to ensure that it has everything that's in it to protect the citizens, but also we're looking at each item by item. But we don't need to do this right now. We need to look at it once we're through this pandemic. So I'd like to make a motion to amend to add this to consent agenda. Is there a second on that?
Second.
And a second by Councilman Hudson. So we'll vote on the motion to amend first to add it to the committee of or the consent agenda, go to committee of the whole. Is there any discussion on that? All right, all those in favor signify by raising your hands and saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that motion carries. Now on the original motion by Councilman Hendricks to reinstate the emergency ordinance number 582, but, excuse me, not 582, emergency ordinance 526, but taking out section 1-D-8 as it's not relevant to the current public health and has caused some problems with some members of the public so far, and the way that it's interpreted, and maybe a possible infringement on the rights of the citizens of Pickens County. So is there any discussion on that? Councilman Hudson.
I would like to say something. As a former law enforcement officer, we have a myriad of gun laws in state and federal. And under the Emergency Protection Act, my fear is right when people need the ability to protect themselves in an emergency, you would infringe on their rights. In other words, CWP holder, if he had to go to the grocery store to get groceries, or he had to go check on a family member, he would possibly have to leave his residence without his firearm. And as a former police officer, legally armed citizens are some of the best protection and the best help that officers trying to enforce the law have. And I just think, kind of adding on to what Mr. Hendricks said, I just wouldn't want to see anything that would impede that ability for citizens to protect themselves at all. I agree with him 100%.
During the discussion, Councilman Whitehurst.
I have a question for the administrator. Put your lawyer cap on. Is what we're doing legal?
Yes. So, and it's a good question, and the lawyer cap still fits. So I will put it on. What you're allowed to do under the law is to enact emergency ordinances. Emergency ordinances can be enacted with one reading. And so what Councilman Hendricks is asking, and what has been seconded by Mr. Feemster and is under discussion, would be an emergency enactment of the ordinance to amend it to take out 1D8, which is involving alcohol, guns, and gasoline. It would take that out entirely. It's allowable because emergency ordinances are only required to have one reading.
Okay.
So yes, it would be legal in that regard. I think there's wisdom to put it into the committee of the whole, however, because there may be other things y'all would like to look at in that ordinance at a more opportune time. But to the extent that this is causing any consternation in the public and interfering with the exercise of the emergency powers we do need, then I certainly think it's appropriate to take it out, because I would agree with your assessment. It does not apply here.
Okay, well, I think that's great, and I'm always hesitant when government steps in, and I guess that's my comment before as to having it published, everything we're doing, and my vote on approval with this would be that you're following those very explicit instructions. We're publishing every order we put, and we have a price tag on every nickel we're spending and how we're spending it. And that needs to be something the public needs to see, so that they see exactly what's going on. And I think that'll take out some of that fear. And that's my biggest concern, is that overreach.
Right. I think you and I are aligned on this issue, although you have the vote, so I certainly respect it.
Any other discussion? Are all those in favor signify by raising your hand? And that motion carries. All right, we'll move on to item number 8. This item, which is a waiver of credit card fees in the Pickens County Treasurer's Office. I asked to put this on the for us to talk about, and especially becomes even more, I guess, pertinent today now that our drive-through is no longer functional. I'd like us to consider waiving the credit card fees related to the collection of taxes in the county treasurer's office for a 30-day window. So historically, we would collect roughly, I believe, County Administrator, Mr. Roper, if you could tell me, I think it's around $15,000 to $18,000. Is that
That's
correct?
what it would have been during February. We pulled that number to give you all a ballpark figure.
Okay. So these are fees that basically we pass along to the end consumer for that we're paying directly for the credit card company. And I'd like us to consider either approving or disapproving waiving the credit card fees for some set period of time. I would suggest for 30 days. Of course, we would have to absorb this cost within the general fund. So I'd like to make a motion, I guess, that we consider waiving the credit card fees for 30 days, and I'd ask for a second.
I'll
Second.
second.
Second by Vice Chairman Bowers, in discussion. Vice Chairman Bowers.
Mr. Chairman, I actually brought this up when we first started talking about COVID-19. And Mr. Roper was going to be looking into numbers because I thought the exact same thing then. Keeps people at home, allows them to do it. And Mr. Roper had said, these fees are not fees that we set. They're from the credit card companies, et cetera, et cetera. So this has been on my radar since the beginning of all this. Mr. Roper, this is really a question for you, but we'll go with discussion. Does council need to do this, or under the Emergency Act, is this within your role and lane? I'm trying to separate council's role during a state of emergency versus the emergency supervisor's role during a state of emergency. So other than just telling you what our feelings are, is this something you really need to do, or is it something we need to do?
Well, I'll tell you that it would fall within the emergency powers. It would be something that we could do. And initially, as I looked at it, I was inclined not to do it because it seemed to be that most people would only realize a small amount from the credit card fees. And I knew that it wasn't fees that came to us. So basically, we would have to take the money out of the general fund to pay the credit card companies directly for the service they're providing. So I was initially not inclined to do it. Facts have changed my mind. And those facts are basically that I'm watching the people sit in the lines to do this in person at the county admin building. So where y'all were ahead of me in this regard, I've learned through hard experience that it's probably a good idea to do, particularly in light of the fact that our drive-through is now broken. We need to incentivize every way we can for people to not come to the county administration building. But I will say this, as my opinion changed on this after the last couple of weeks of watching, I also knew that this was going to be on the agenda. And while I thought I had the power to do it, I certainly thought it wise to wait till you gentlemen could meet since you had it on your agenda.
Councilman Hendricks.
Yes, sir. One thing I know you asked for a sunset period on this, but one thing I'd like for us to also consider that should this be one of the viable options, this or melon for people to pay their taxes, that if the 30-day period is not long enough, we look at extending it longer for our taxpayers so that they do not get faced with extra fees should they have to rely on this further down the road.
We'll put it on the agenda for the next council meeting to discuss in 30 days. That's a good idea. Councilman Whitehurst.
Can we direct, I know while we're doing this crisis right now, but after the crisis, we need to look at our credit card company processing fees. I'm thinking, these are open-ended contracts. I've done these before. They're the most horrible things in the world. And I think it's just an opportunity for someone to take advantage of a large government. I mean, that's a lot of money that the taxpayers are paying. And so I think it's something we need to review or what kind of contract we're in and shop around and see if we can't find a better deal on that. Just not now, but throw it on your list when this is done.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Did everybody raise their hand? Okay, they did. Unanimous, sorry. I got to watch real close. All right, we'll move on to our next item, number 9, which is first reading and title only of an ordinance number 582 to provide for the adoption of a budget amendment containing estimates of revenue and expenditure changes for Pickens County. This is for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019 and ending June the 30th, 2020. So this is looking backwards. Mr. Roper, if you could give it just a 30-second highlight.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the adjustment for the things that may have happened in adjustments for revenues that we didn't expect or expenditures that we didn't expect over the last budget year. These will all be tied. You'll get a list of these as we go through this in the work session environment. Today's reading is just in title only, but you'll get this list and they'll all be tied to specific actions that took. So this will be something you've done in the past year that you all determined needed to be done, but the budget needs to be updated to reflect it.
Very good. Is there a motion and a second that constitute first reading of title only of ordinance number 582? Motion by Vice Chairman Bowers.
Second.
Second by Councilman Hudson. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. That motion carries. On to item number 10. I'm laughing at myself. I'm sorry, guys. I got to look and see if I see hands or not. Item number 10. This is first reading in title only of an ordinance number 583 to provide for the levy of taxes in Pickens County for ordinary county purposes for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2020 and ending June 30th, 2021, and to direct the expenditure thereof. Keep in mind, this is our new budget going forward, and this is our first reading in title only. If I can get a motion in a second, and then I have a question for our administrator. Motion by Vice Chairman Bowers, second by Councilman Hudson. All right, Mr. Roper, if you could give us, I guess, your update on where you are with that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to read basically what is the budget transmittal letter, which you all will be getting on top of the budgets. The budgets were printed and are available tonight in the council chambers, but we'll have those hand delivered to y'all tomorrow, as is our tradition that y'all get them at first reading. But I'm going to read this, and it'll take me just a minute to read it, but I think it'll present some of the information you may have questions about. The proposed operating and capital budget for fiscal year 2021 is provided to you in compliance with state law, which provides that the county administrator shall prepare the operating and capital budget and submit it to the council at such time as the council determines. At the time of submitting the budget, the county administrator shall submit to the council a statement describing the important features of the proposed budget, including the sources of revenue and the amount of tax revenue required to meet that financial requirement. Previous action of the council in April 2020, previous council, the action of the council set April the 6th, 2020 at the date of the first reading. There are 3 required readings by the county council of the ordinance to enact the budget. Traditionally, as we're doing tonight, this first reading is in title only, with the second and third readings following at later dates, along with budget work sessions as council deems necessary. When staff began the budget formation process, we were informed and guided by county council's stated goals for 2020. These goals were to 1, maintain a conservative budget, 2, broaden economic development, 3, plan for capital expenditures, 4, establish sustainable road maintenance, 5, develop comprehensive tourism approach, and 6, advance unified emergency services. All county departments were instructed to submit their various budget requests on or before January 31st, 2020. In keeping with the council's goal 1 of maintaining a conservative budget, county finance officials and I met with each department head individually and reviewed their requests, asking for justification and explanation on a budget line by budget line basis. These meetings were integral in challenging budget assumptions, answering questions, and ensuring that zero-based budgeting principles were maintained. The budget we then developed contemplated the other goals of council, and insofar as the constraints allowed, we planned for implementation of those 6 goals. But with the advent and spread of the COVID-19 virus, these priorities were changed by outside forces. At its April 16th, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting, Council instructed staff to simplify the budget process in response to the outbreak and submit a budget to Council that reflected no tax or fee increases. Council's manifest desire was the preparation and submission of a budget that could be easily digested and expeditiously passed so that county staff and county council could focus more exclusively on the looming COVID-19 situation. Fortunately, county council's previous direction, indeed its first stated goal, was to make this process easier than it would have been otherwise. Attached to this transmittal memorandum that I'm reading to you now is a budget with no taxes increased and no fees increased. Wants are not reflected in this budget I am transmitting to you, but instead only needs. We had requests from various departments.
Hold on, Mr. Roper, hold please for just a second. I'm gonna make a motion that we suspend the meeting. We seem to have lost feed from Mr. Feemster.
I'll second your motion if your intent is like a recess to try to reconnect.
Yes. All those in favor of suspending the meeting for a moment, please raise your hand. Okay, we are in recess for just until we get through these technical issues.
Mr. Chairman, you wouldn't happen to have some elevator music during this time, would you?
Hey,
I got
my
some.
video.
Hold on a sec. Here we go. I can
no.
take care of this.
Oh no,
Well, I got a whole selection here we can do. How about some Scarborough Fair? Is that good?
Oh, okay, cool. I like that.
That's too soft.
Where's Carl's
Tom
left the
Petty.
building. Is he calling in? Mr. Feemster's reconnecting.
Tom Petty.
Yeah, okay. Here he comes.
Done.
Well, Mr. Feemster, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, I see you now.
Okay.
As long as you didn't fall asleep on us. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Apparently, I'm not using the right brand of internet service.
I don't want to go there. I don't know anything. Okay. All right. I'm gonna make a motion that, or not make it. I'm just gonna call us back into our session now, as long as we're still recording. We are, so we're officially back into our session. Mr. Roper, if you will become unmuted and then finish telling us what you were telling us. Can you unmute Mr. Roper? Okay.
All right, I believe I'm unmuted. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
All right. I think I was pointing out at that time that we had requests from various county departments for 28 additional county employees. So the different departments had determined they wanted 28 new county employees. We reviewed all of that, and at the end, the budget that we're conveying to you tonight has only one of those approved. And that one was someone that we thought was integral. We'll go into more detail, not someone, but a position we thought was integral that we will need in the coming budget year. Vehicle replacement requests have only been granted when our fleet maintenance department concurred with the department request as being in the best interest of our fleet maintenance budget. No additional vehicles are being provided. Only replacements where our vehicle maintenance folks have said that old vehicles are starting to cause us problems. In fact, we're taking steps, and we will continue to take steps, I think, as we proved, to reduce the overall size of our motor vehicle fleet as being in our best interest long-term. This proposed budget is cognizant of your clear direction, both before and after the COVID-19 outbreak. We have included in this budget an implementation schedule for a 5-year capital plan, including a dedication of specific millage to the extent available to partially offset the expense of this year's needed capital purchases. The balance of the capital expenses will be drawn from the proceeds from the sale of a capital asset, which council approved some months back. The proposed budget also centralizes the fire district's training expenses and equipment purchases so as to maximize the county's buying power and provide uniformity and efficiencies where possible. That having been said, based on this council's direction, no fire fees will increase this year. In keeping with the intent of the ordinance and the previous use of the funds, this budget specifies that all of the proceeds from the $20 road user fee be allocated exclusively to work on our county and municipal road system. It also provides for the continued operations of our parks and tourism, as well as our economic development initiatives. During this time of crisis, I believe we're learning now more than ever how important those departments are to the well-being of our citizens. I am confident that the staff's proposed budget balances the needs for the current crisis with the long-term well-being of the county government and its citizens. As correctly pointed out by the members of this county council some weeks ago, more audacious plans for county operations are not appropriate during the middle of a pandemic. Accordingly, we have made this budget transparent and easily understood, reflecting our current year's budget with only minor changes. I would be remiss if I did not thank Ralph Garino and Jody Laws of our finance department for their dedication, professionalism, and adaptability to what became a seriously evolving budget process. I also want to commend the various departments and the elected officials that I met with one-on-one along with the finance department for their cooperative attitudes and their openness to dialogue as we develop the budget. Gentlemen, again, the actual paper copies of this will be made available to you tomorrow. We'll have them hand delivered. This entire document will also be available on the website tomorrow as well in a format like our newsletter where you can page through it. But thank you for your patience as I read that transmittal letter. It was my first opportunity to do such a letter, so I was excited about it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Roper. And I just wanted to say that I keep hearing the words of Councilman Whitehurst in my head as you guys are planning on this, which is when he had said that we want to keep everything as static as possible and continue to look for efficiencies. And I know that we'll have further discussion on this when we go into our next meeting to specifically talk about those individual details. Does anyone else have any other comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of the first reading in title only of ordinance number 583, please signify by raising your hand. That motion carries. On to item number 11. This is the third reading of ordinance number 579 to certify the American House Spinning Mill as a textile mill site under the South Carolina Textiles Communities Revitalization Act and matters related thereto. I ask for a motion and a second that constitute the third reading before we open up for discussion. Motion by Vice Chairman Bowers, second by Councilman Hendricks. I do know that this is something that we have been, or they have been working on for quite some time. And as far as I understand, Mr. Roper, they finally got everything together to move forward.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, that's correct. They're ready to proceed.
Is there any other discussion on this third reading of ordinance number 579? All right, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. That motion carries. On to item number 12, our consent agenda. So just to let everybody know that in the essence of time, I want to see if there's anything else. Let's see. Okay, in the essence of time, we've always used the consent agenda just to go to put something to committee of the whole. But this gives us an opportunity to add some of these other things to the committee of the whole and to vote on them all at once. If somebody has something that they need us to specifically pull out, we can do that. But let me read the items that are on the consent agenda. The first item that we've added to the consent agenda was our ordinance on the Declaration of I almost said that Declaration of Independence, I swear. The Declaration of Emergency, we're sending that to the Committee of the Whole to look at. Our 2020 accommodations tax recommendations to the Committee of the Whole. Our recreation funding recommendations to the Committee of the Whole. We have a noise ordinance that we want to send to the Committee of the Whole. Our COVID-19 updates to the Committee of the Whole. Then we have a resolution number 2020-03 designating April 2020 as Fair Housing Awareness Month in Pickens County. We also have item number F, proclamation number 2020-04, declaring the week of April 12th through the 18th to be National Telecommunicators Week in Pickens County, which to me is incredible when you look at those dispatchers and what they're having to do, especially right now. And then we have our second reading of an ordinance number 580 to develop the jointly owned and operated industrial business park in conjunction with Oconee County. Such industrial business park to be at the time of its initial development geographically located in Oconee County and to include certain property now or to be owned by a company known to the county at this time as Project Aztec or its assignee, and established pursuant to South Carolina Code of Laws 1976 section 4-1-170 as amended to provide for a written agreement with Oconee County providing for the expenses of the park, percentage of revenue allocation, and the distribution of fees in lieu of ad valorem tax and matters related thereto. Of course, this is, as all of you know, and to those that are watching, this is where we work in conjunction with for a multi-county industrial park. It really means only 1% to Pickens County, but it is at least something where we can work together with Oconee on that. And then item number H, second reading of an ordinance number 581, setting forth terms and conditions for the leasing of certain real property located at 116B Commons Way, Central, South Carolina, to Clemson Paul Partners, a not-for-profit agency organized and existing under the laws of the state of South Carolina and matters related thereto. Of course, this has to do with the report that we got at the last meeting, and we had our first reading to begin working on a real property location for Clemson Paul Partners. So I ask for a motion and a second that we approve the consent agenda items as presented. Motion by Vice Chairman Bowers.
Second.
Second by, I think it was Councilman Hudson. Is there any other discussion on these items? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. That motion carries. And now we'll go to
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
yeah, do you want to go to executive session?
Can we go to executive session?
No. You cannot. It is not on the agenda.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
All right, motion by Vice Chairman Bowers to adjourn, second by Councilman Hudson. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And we are adjourned, and I want to personally say thank you guys for helping to make this possible, at least so we can be as transparent as we can be to the public. And thank you to our clerk, Ms. Bradford, and to our IT team who has been working long hours to make sure that this is possible and that it worked out fine. So once again, I wish you all to be safe and to be healthy. So I look forward to speaking with you again, and we are adjourned. Thank y'all.